This gospel, the parable in it, is known as the parable of the rich fool. But to maybe many a modern observer, this man may be, in his actions, making a lot of sense because he has a bountiful harvest, and so in order to protect it, he builds his barns bigger. He protects that investment. He's protecting himself. And we can look at that this man in all occasions is very successful. He has his comfort. But if we look at it through the Christian lens, he's lacking some things. St. Basil the Great, an early monk of the church, had a commentary on this particular gospel, and he said this. He said, even though this man may have his success and have his comfort, he forgets the poor. That he's built this grand barn, but this barn could have been a house for the needy. So those are challenging words today for St. Basil, but also throughout our readings, because we're cautioned against vanity and greed. And especially Jesus today, he even puts a lot of warning towards us. That he puts a stern cautioning to us as well. He says, this night your life will be demanded of you. And also he goes on to say this. He urges us to be rich in what matters to God, not be making all these treasures our own. So what is being rich in what matters to God? What makes us rich in that sense? Well, we don't have to look that far. We can look into the gospel, and we hear what Jesus says that he cares about, that he wants for us. Whatever you do for the least of my brothers, you do for me. We can also look at another gospel story about another rich person, the rich young man. And the rich young man is a person that comes up to Jesus. This is in Matthew chapter 19, and Jesus is teaching. And this young man comes up and says, "Good teacher, what must I do to inherit eternal life?" And Jesus says, "Well, you know the commandments, follow the commandments." And this rich young man says, "Well, I've done that since my youth, good teacher." Well, then Jesus takes it a little bit further. He says, "Well, then, if you've done that, go and sell all you have, give it to the poor, and then follow me, and then you will have treasure in heaven." And then we hear afterward that the rich young man goes away. And after that, Jesus teaches them after this. He says to everybody, "Whoever gives up houses or lands or brothers or sisters or mothers and follows me will have 100-fold in heaven." So we hear what Jesus treasures, and that is not accumulation, but giving away. To give up houses, to give up lands, to go sell all we have. So that's a high calling of the gospel. And it's a reminder to us that everything that we have is gift. I love that saying, everything is gift. If you think about it, even the things that we earn, we go and earn a salary. Well, we earn that salary because we're using our time and our God-given talents, which were given to us by God, to earn it. So if we think about that, if we think about everything that we have as being gift, it may make us a little bit happier, because then it really seems that God has been so gracious to us. We're undeserving of these gifts, but he showers them lavishly on us. But also, too, there's a high responsibility that we've been entrusted with these gifts, whether it is the time that we have, whether it is the talents that we cultivate, or whether it's the resources that we have. Because we have these precious things, that we have a stewardship over them. We're called to protect them. And so there's something about that, too, that we're called to protect it, but also what all gifts are meant to do, we're also called to do with all good gifts, and that's to give them away. Gifts are meant to be given away. To give away to help build up the kingdom. There's a great teaching in our Catholic faith. Catholic social teaching is very broad, and we've been, in the last 100 years, we've had a lot of articulation from the popes and also from Vatican II. And one of the principles of Catholic social teaching that really ties in well today is the principle of solidarity. And what solidarity means is that each and every human being on this earth has a unity with each and every other human being on this earth. And it's because of one thing. It comes from Genesis 1:26, that we are all made in the image and likeness of God. So because of that, because we're made in the image and likeness of God, we have this solidarity or this unity with each and every human person on this earth. And Vatican II was very good at articulating solidarity. Now, as Vatican II, as we got to the 60s, there were a lot of questions that were being asked. The church had to answer a lot of questions. And one of them was, what's the role of the Catholic Church in the modern world? There were some that believed that it should take a more clandestine role, that should be kind of like an enclave and that people should come to it. But then there was another school of thought that the Catholic Church should do the opposite, that it should go out and should be what we call the leaven in society. That the church should be like the yeast in the world that makes it rise up and to give the light of the gospel to it. And most of the thought was it shifted towards that latter idea, that the church is called to be that leaven in society. And in one of the documents, which was called Gaudium et Spes is probably one of the most famous documents of Vatican II, that was actually titled the document on the church in the modern world. And it said that the church is indeed supposed to be a leaven to go out there into the world. And solidarity is a key feature of that church. And it says in Gaudium et Spes that the church is called to solidarity. It cherishes its call to solidarity with the entire human race and its history. And there's something very important with that, because the church is called to go out there and to show that each and every human being has dignity, and to help those who suffer to be built up and to be given higher dignity. So that's what it is. We're called to go out. The church is called to go out, not sit on its laurels, not to sit on a barn and let its talents and treasures go to waste, but to go out and to bring the light of the gospel into the world. I don't know if anybody has heard of a guy. His name is the Sultan of Brunei. Brunei is a small country in Asia, and this Sultan is the sovereign of this country. And I would not know of the Sultan of Brunei unless it wasn't made known to me that he has a really cool car collection. The Sultan of Brunei probably has the largest car collection in the world, over 7,000 cars. And if you can think about it, is because he's a very rich man, he's probably not accumulating Toyota Camrys, Ford F-150s of the like there. He has very, very precious, very, very rare cars, like some of the greatest cars ever made. The McLaren F1, the Ferrari F40. He has those cars, and he stores them in warehouses. But a story came out a few years ago that some of these cars, actually a lot of these cars, were rotting. They were falling into disrepair. They were rusting because they were not well maintained. This Sultan has all these cars, but many of them are rotting. And for me, as a car guy who watches Top Gear, that's a tragedy. It's a huge tragedy that these precious cars, are going to waste. Because a Ferrari F1 or a Ferrari F40 and a McLaren F1 are not meant to be sitting for decades in a warehouse. No, they're meant to go out and tear up the streets. For the guy who owns it, the guy who's rich enough to own it, he's supposed to go out and drive it. And for me, who's not rich enough to own it, I'm there to go watch it go by and say, hey, that's a cool car. I'm never going to be able to drive it, but it's still a cool car. But the point of it is this. The point of this story is this, is that those cars, they were meant to be driven. And the gifts that we have, the gifts that God has given us, those gifts and talents, they're also made to be given. They were made not to squander the gifts that we have, but we're also made to make sure that those are put to good use and that they help our brothers and sisters. So that's the heart of it, that we're called to actually mimic that generosity of God, because God is so generous. We're called to mimic that even wanton or reckless generosity of God, who gives just because out of his goodness. It doesn't make sense. But we're called to try as our best to imitate that. Now, there's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of pressure that may prevent us or try to prevent us from being generous. One is maybe our own fear. You know, we may think to ourselves, well, we may have the same thought of this rich fool in the first reading or in the gospel, that, well, I have so much right now. I have it right now, and I'm so glad that I have it. I want to save it up for a rainy day. I can't be generous because I don't want to lose it. Well, that fearfulness is forgetting something. It's forgetting just how generous God is. And also this, if God was so generous to us in the past that he was able to give us so many good things, can't we trust that he's going to be generous to us in the future and give us many blessings, or maybe even more blessings? So today, we should really trust that God will be good to us in the future. Maybe not economically, but in very many ways. So that should allow us to be recklessly generous as our God is, and go out and give from ourselves. This kind of also brings into that idea of giving until it hurts, which is kind of what tithing is. Now, I like to talk about tithing from time to time because it's important to talk about. I'll say three things about it. One is it's optional. Tithing 10% of our income. It's an option. We're not conscripted to do it. Two is that it's challenging. It can be very challenging to want to part with 10% of our income to give to the church or to the poor. But the third thing I'll point out is that even though it's the first two, it's also realistic. It's something that we can do. Now, when I talk about tithing, I also mention that I tithe. And it's not to make myself feel good. Sometimes that's why I don't want to talk about tithing. But I talk about tithing, I say that I tithe because I want to make it I want to make it sure that it is realistic. It's something that we can do still to this day. Now, not everybody is called to do it. Not everybody can do it. But it is something that maybe we can discern, and we can ask the Lord if we are called to be generous in that way or even in any other ways. I had a friend a couple years ago, and she was telling me a story about when she got her first job. Now, she's a very faithful person, and she said that she wanted to, when she got her first job, she wanted to begin to tithe. She wanted to regularly tithe her income. And she realized as she was doing her budgeting that it was really going to hurt. She didn't think that she really could afford it. But she had this feeling, she had this calling that she felt that the Lord was calling her to do this. And so she decided to do it. And she was kind of worried at the beginning, at the onset, that maybe I bit off more than I can chew. Maybe I shouldn't do this. Well, earlier, probably a couple weeks before she started tithing, she helped her friends and her friends' parents move to a new house. And her friend came up to her and says, my parents were so generous, or we're so grateful for your generosity that you helped us move. They want you to have this little gift. It's just not a lot. It's not a lot of money, but they want you to have it. She opened the envelope and she looked in there, and lo and behold, the amount was nearly to the dollar the amount that she actually tithed the first time. And she started to break down in tears because she thought, this is incredible. Now, I have to say one thing. This wasn't a wink from God that she was going to always be recouped for all the money that she tithed. But it was a wink from God that whatever she did, He would provide. Whether she was in poverty or whether she was successful, He would provide. And that's one last thing I have to say about tithing, is that we shouldn't look at tithing like some of those TV evangelists say it is, that we go and we plant a seed and that we will see economic benefits in return. No, that's not the point of tithing. That's not the point of our generosity. We don't do it to get economic return. We do it because of, probably most importantly, that principle of solidarity, that we're called to recognize our union with the entire human race and to help build up the kingdom of God. So that's the great thing, is that we have a God who is provider and provides for us. And He calls us, especially in this gospel today, to really be generous. And so much so that we give entirely of ourselves. And so that's the thing, that's the calling that we have each and every day, is to try more and more to imitate that generosity of our God, who gave up everything for the world on the cross.